Welcome to the Mango Effect podcast, where every week we explore a range of ideas and inspiration that all culminate in designing the lifestyle that we've always dreamed of. No topics are off limits. We get into the practical, the hypothetical, and the downright juicy stuff. I'm Mindy Rosso, your host and lifestyle cheerleader, and I'm here today to talk about what it's like to live and still thrive with long COVID. We've all been living through this thing called a pandemic, in case you haven't noticed. And a lot of us have come out the other end having interesting health challenges, shall I say. And I'm one of the lucky ones. So have you ever worked through a serious illness or recovered from injury and it really left you questioning yourself and your capabilities? When you can no longer trust your body to deliver for you, what do you do then? I had never experienced this until I caught COVID in August 2020 for the first time, and then dealt with the aftermath of long COVID. A lot of you may have been in a similar place. You may be listening to this because you're like, oh, somebody's talking about what it's really like. So wherever you're coming from, whether you're just curious, you've had it, you know somebody who's had long COVID or still dealing with it, it is a booger. I will just say straight up that long COVID is something I had never experienced anything similar to it when I got it. And I tend to be I would consider myself a very healthy human. I am just a little bit of a health and fitness nut. I've always been OCD about my diet. I work out a bazillion times a week. You know, a typical day is like 3 hours of exercise, and that's just a normal day. That's not even days where I'm pushing too hard. So for me, fitness and lifestyle and health and immunity, all of these things are really, really important to my well-being. And also, I have noticed, very much a part of my identity. And so when that felt like it was taken away from me, there was this sense of loss. There was a grieving process, and it was really, really challenging, especially initially when I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So if you have a relative, or if you yourself have struggled with something like this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's hard. There's no other way to put it. It is really, really difficult. And when you first experience it or you've helped somebody through it, there is a psychological component. There's also the mental component. There is the how you're physically feeling component. If you feel like your healthcare team is not supporting you, there's that. And people think you're a little bit crazy, there's that. So there are so many factors, I think, that come into long-term illness. Any type of long-term illness, it doesn't even have to be long COVID, that we feel very, very challenged in the moment. And it is very hard to explain to people who've never experienced it. And sometimes it's also hard to figure it out for yourself and describe it to people. So what I felt about COVID when it first happened, when we first heard about the pandemic, I was one of those very, very skeptical people. I thought, well, you know, if I just take good care of myself, I'm super healthy, I have a strong immune system, why do we need to wear masks? You know, I was not in the camp where I was being safe. I was not, sanitizing my hands and antibacterial everything, wiping down my groceries. I was not in that camp. I was on the opposite end of the spectrum. Now, I wasn't protesting or anything like that, but I just didn't think it was necessary, and I thought it was overkill, and I thought, if I just take care of myself, if I make myself as healthy as I possibly can be, I either won't get COVID, or if I do get it, it'll be very mild, and I'll get over it and just be fine. And I thought I was going to just, kind of skate right on past it. Nothing would happen. That's not what happened, though. So I got COVID. My family, I think they might have had it back in August 2020, but they didn't show any of the symptoms that I really showed. I got it hard, and how I dealt with it at the time, I didn't really believe that I had it. I thought I was making it up in my head. I thought, the symptoms aren't really exactly what I see on the website. I took the COVID test, the questionnaire, I should say, multiple times. And so I should have actually gone in and got tested, but I waited a little too long, and how it was back in the day. And then we had some mishaps with Hawaii tests not being accurate COVID and got mixed up and all kinds of fun stuff. So basically, I did not have a test that just told me for sure you have COVID. So there was that component where I thought, okay, maybe I had it, maybe I didn't. I'm not quite sure. I think I did. And so I was questioning myself there. And then I thought if I could just willpower my way through it, like I can just do my normal stuff, I'll be fine. So I overdid everything. I tried to continue working out. And when I realized something was wrong was lifting. I was doing squats. I like to do, at that time, I was very much into like heavy weightlifting. Like I wanted my numbers to go up. I was into like the powerlifting side of things, weightlifting side of things, snatches, cleans, all of that good stuff. And I was heaving. I couldn't complete the lift without going, I couldn't even breathe. I'm like, okay, this is COVID. There's definitely something wrong here. So I realized stink. I have to slow down. I have to kind of figure out what is going on. So after a few weeks, I'm like, oh, COVID isn't supposed to last that long. I should feel fine. I should get back to my normal self. I noticed I needed a lot more sleep. I noticed that I couldn't work out at the frequency that I was accustomed to. My husband and I are very athletic. We met at a gym, okay? So that tells you we're both like complete gym rats. If we had our way, we would exercise twice a day and surf once or twice a day. Like we would literally exercise all day long. So that's kind of the people that we are. So he's exercising like normal. He's fine. I'm like, okay, he should have had something. He should have experienced COVID like I am. And here I am. I thought, in my mind, I thought I was much healthier than he was too. I'm being honest here. I had a little bit of a complex, like I'm better than you because I take better care of myself. In my mind, I'm like, I do my ROMWOD, I do my stretches, I do my mobility work, I take more supplements. And so it made me just a little bit angry to see that he wasn't feeling any ill effects and I was the one that was down. So in retrospect, it's kind of funny. So I overdid it, basically. I couldn't get back to my old self, and I realized I had to actually start changing my schedule. At the time, I was actually, because I'm in Hawaii, and some of my clients are in Europe, Sweden, UK, East Coast, I was getting up at 4 a.m. for some calls and literally talking at 4:30. I was delivering presentations at 5 a.m. Like, it was insane. And so I had to actually start backing that down, and I backed it down to like, okay, I'm not talking till 6 a.m. Then that slowly came down to like 7 a.m., so I realized I had to change my schedule because I just literally could not get the rest that I needed, and it was just really, really challenging. Also the brain fog, and if a lot of you have been through COVID or long COVID or just the repercussions of it, the brain fog is real, and you will sit down at your desk or stand at your desk in my case, and you just cannot get your brain to engage. You feel like you're like staring at the same words trying to type. You're like, it shouldn't take me 30 minutes to respond to one email. It was taking me like 30 minutes to write like a very simple response. So I knew something was wrong. But I tried to just push through it. And before long haulers was in the media, it was really not a thing. It was really this thing that people were talking about. I had to like join some exclusive Slack communities and this group called Body Politic, which they're a fantastic group. If you're curious, it's a Slack community, and a lot of people that are struggling with long COVID are in there. So I joined that, which made me feel that I wasn't alone because I heard other people describing very, very similar symptoms. So at this point, there was not a vaccine. There was nothing of the sort, at least where I was. So it was many, many months of struggling through long haulers. And I felt like I was a little bit crazy. My husband did not believe me. He thought, he's like, you're fine, Mindy. You're just tired. You're just, working really hard. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's more than that. And as a breadwinner, like he was actually coming off his job and stopping work. And I felt all that pressure, I think, to deliver and provide for the family. And I could not rely on my body. There would be certain days where I would just literally collapse. And I would be on a call, and as soon as the lights came off, I would just lie down on the ground and just like, oh my gosh, okay, just let me like lie here for 20 minutes. I'll be fine. So it was very much a lot of that. And then last minute calls, I would have calls on my calendar, and last minute I would have to cancel them because I just literally couldn't see straight, or I couldn't put my words together. I couldn't think, I couldn't talk. And so for me, my business is very much about personal brand. I am the brand. I am the face. I do the work. I am very much a solopreneur. I have like a small team, and at the time I was in a partnership with another amazing human. but that wasn't working out too well because I felt like I kept dropping the ball. And so it's really, really difficult, I think, when you associate so strongly with your health, when health is one of your major pillars. And I've talked about it before on the podcast, but the Framework of Life book, which has different categories, like 12 different categories of your life book that you should be focusing on. And health and fitness is the first one. And that has definitely been a bedrock for me throughout my entire life. It has always been health and fitness. I was that really weird 23-year-old that was a Weston A. Price chapter leader. Like, who does that at 23? Like, Weston A. Price is like for, 40, 50-year-olds. And yep, that was me. I was that person. So I have always been fascinated, I think, with health and wellness and well-being, anti-aging, immunity, mental illness, and mental health and well-being is really important because my family has a very, very strong history of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So for me, it's critical that my health is dialed in. So I felt like a crazy person, and I'm not saying that to be demeaning. I'm not trying to use crazy person in a very poor way or, not being politically correct. It literally felt like my brain was just not working in the normal fashion. And I got very, very scared. To be honest, I felt like I was going to be triggered into bipolar disorder. It was pretty scary for me because my brain just was not working. I was starting to feel very anxious. I was starting to feel very depressed, and it was affecting my overall well-being. So I realized at that point, something has to change. I had to accept that this is long COVID. From what I can tell, there is no test that you can take out there that says, okay, you have long COVID. You can get it diagnosed. You can go talk to a specialist. Thankfully, there are professionals, and I actually have a wonderful doctor who has helped me through a lot of my long COVID issues. So there are resources out there. So I highly recommend, if you do think you are struggling with this, please do not struggle by yourself. There are resources out there. Please get it addressed. If something is not right, trust your body and trust that you know that something is off. And if you have to go to multiple practitioners to get somebody that will listen, that will actually hear you and help you work through the issues, do that, because it makes such a big difference. Because for so many months, I felt like I was struggling on my own, and I was just trying to use like the Slack community, and I was Googling all kinds of stuff. Like I was trying to Google like chronic fatigue syndrome. There are so many parallels to people that suffer with these types of post-viral issues. So for me, that was just such a struggle. So I guess, words of advice. If you feel like you have long COVID, go get it checked out and go talk to a specialist, because there are a lot of things that you can actually do. But for me, it felt like the dark night of the soul. And I realized this was a turning point for me, and I had to figure something out. So for me, when that happens, I go, okay, all right, Mindy, put your logical brain on between the brain fog. Like, sometimes you do have these moments of lucidity with even amidst the brain fog. You're like, okay, this is the moment. I've got to figure this out right here, right now. So during those moments, I try to view it objectively and very logically, and like, okay, what are the different components that I can actually change on my own to fix this, or to remedy this, or to even just make it a little bit better? And so for me, that came down to, first of all, figuring out my sleep. And sleep is really, really important. It is underrated, and it is my obsession right now. If you're curious, I go through these, side note, I go through these phases where I do like immersive learning, and right now it is all sleep books. So if you want to know anything about sleep, I am your person. Like, I am really, really enjoying it right now. So back to the long COVID and sleep. So sleep is critically important. So for me, I actually had to get more sleep, which was frustrating because I used to be able to get by with about an hour less sleep than I can get by with now and still perform well. And so that was really, really challenging, was trying to figure out my sleep and what that looked like. And I needed to get up actually later, which is actually more aligned with my chronotype. Now I know that. I didn't know that at the time. Getting up later in the mornings and having a slower start, a little more relaxed start, instead of trying to jump right in and do emails within 30 minutes of waking up. So for me, that was, something I had to work through. Also, I had to work on breathing and mindfulness. I experimented with some meditation, some breathing practices, but I think more than that, it was really understanding my relationship to breathing and exercise. And I am a crazy exerciser, as I mentioned. So for me, I had to actually pace my workouts a little bit more. And instead of trying to do so many Tabatas, HIIT workouts, stuff that is jacking my heart rate through the roof, I had to actually take a more moderate approach to exercise, which actually, like thinking back now and seeing where I have come since then over the past almost 2 years, it's been really interesting to see how that has positively affected my relationship with exercise. I feel like exercise for me now is more about nurturing my body and allowing it to express itself versus trying to beat my body into submission or make it do things that it doesn't want to do. So I think from that perspective, it's been very positive, but it was quite a dramatic change for me then because I was all of a sudden not burning as many calories. I'm doing air quotes. You can't see that. And I was having a little bit of fear that I was going to start putting on a lot of weight. You know, I have had issues. I will talk about that on another episode, but body dysmorphia and anorexia and, you know, kind of going down that road in my early 20s. So I didn't want to go back down that road. So for me, it came to figuring out, okay, how do I do exercise? How do I do surfing? How do I do my workouts? And figuring out like a balance that actually worked very, very well. And it was interesting because a lot of people that I've talked with who have had long COVID and also surfed, they found that surfing was very, very challenging for them and actually didn't help them. It hurt them a bit. So they were surprised that surfing for me was actually a little bit more relaxing than typical weights workouts. So for me, I'm like, okay, if I can get in the water every day or every other day or multiple times per week, I'm going to feel a lot better. And at least I'm like checking the box on exercise, even if I can't lift weights that day. So I think there's a process and everybody's really unique. I've heard people that say the opposite, that, you know, doing weight training and such is actually easier for them than doing cardiovascular training because of the breathing element. So I think it's figuring out what works for you. I'm not giving prescriptive advice. I'm just sharing my experience here. But that tended to work really, really well for me. And then I also had to look at my food and my diet. And at the time, I'm like, my diet is perfect. You know, my macros are perfect. My micronutrients are good. But there were some things that I actually had to shift. So if you're familiar with antihistamine diets, which basically there are certain foods that, like for example, like really ripe bananas or really ripe avocados, and they just mess with your immune system if you have a histamine intolerance. And so I didn't have an histamine intolerance before long COVID. Afterwards, I did. And so I realized I actually had to start taking an antihistamine twice a day, and that seemed to help a lot. I noticed a big difference. Also, allergies started popping up, which I had never had issues with allergies before. And so the antihistamine also helped with that. And I had to change my diet. And a lot of the foods I was eating were very high in histamines. I ate a lot of sauerkraut, kombucha, anything fermented. You know, I come from the Weston A. Price camp and paleo and all that. So I had a lot of like what I would consider superfoods in my diet that did not work well for me. And I would notice, like I'd eat, it's so weird, but I would eat a ripe banana. And within like 10, 20 minutes afterwards, I would have this massive headache, and I don't get headaches. So it was this instant reaction from foods that were high in histamine. So for me, changing that and actually figuring out that histamines were the problem for me, that took a while to figure out. Once I figured that out, it was like, okay, I can actually function, and I was getting less brain fog, and it definitely improved my symptoms. So I think if you are in a similar scenario and you're struggling and you are feeling either not good after certain meals or foods, it's definitely worth do some just straight up Google searching and looking around to see what may be causing those symptoms, and then talk to somebody that is a specialist, like a nutritionist, especially somebody who helps people through illnesses and also, you know, just different types of health challenges, and is what you don't want to do is look for somebody who is, I am strictly paleo, or I'm a carnivore diet person, or I'm a vegetarian or a vegan. Like, you really don't want to find somebody that's, I would say, dictatorial about the food choices. Find somebody that's really open-minded, that uses different approaches. Okay, side note. So doing all of these changes actually started to improve my symptoms. But what I had to learn next was how to pace myself. So if you are familiar with chronic illness, you probably have heard the term pacing. And basically, pacing is, how I would describe it in my own words, is how many spoons I have in a day. So when you're thinking of spoons, it's how much energy. So for example, like some days I would wake up and I'm like, I have like 10 spoons. Like I have all the spoons. I have lots of spoons, lots of energy available. And basically a spoon is something like, it's almost like currency. It's like your energy currency. So I would say like doing a video call would require a spoon. if it was like 15 minutes. If it was a 30 minutes call and there were other people in the call, then maybe it was still a spoon, but maybe a spoon and a half. If it was a presentation, oh, that's going to cost me for sure. If it's an hour presentation, at least 3 spoons, maybe 4 if it's 90 minutes. So all of a sudden I started having this way to calculate how much energy I had that day and then matching it with what I needed to get done. And that was revolutionary for me. And I actually learned this concept from one of my friends in Lifebook. Like, she shared this with me because she had worked through some chronic illnesses for herself and with her husband. And it was such a powerful thing when I thought about my energy levels in terms of spoons. Like, okay, some days I wake up with a lot of spoons. Some days, it's going to take a spoon just to get out of bed and get ready for the day. So it was really that concept that helped me to shape my days. But then along with that, I had to figure out, okay, how can I still bring my best professional self to work and work with my clients and still be in integrity, because that is really, really important to me. So I actually had to back down my client load and how many projects I would take on, which was really, really difficult because in my mind, I'm Superwoman. In my mind, I was thinking of myself as having unlimited energy. I could focus when I wanted to focus, but now that was changed. And so I had to see myself from a different light and realize that I actually needed more time for myself. So I needed to learn how to be, not just to do. And that's hard because I'm a type A overachiever by nature. And I'm always on to the next thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. Say yes to way too many things and then wonder why I can't get them all done. So I had to figure out, how do I interact in the professional world, and especially working remotely, because it's really difficult when you work remote. And for example, if you have a call scheduled with a prospect and you have to cancel that call 15 minutes before, that makes you look completely flaky, right? Like you just overslept and you decided not to do the call. So for me, it was really, really challenging to try to figure out, okay, how do I do this in integrity? How much of my illness do I share with my clients? Because I don't want them to think that I'm putting them on the back burner, that I don't want to talk to them. I need to be really thoughtful with my energy management here. So there were a lot of scenarios and dilemmas that I had to work through and get to a happy place. So if you are there right now, just realize it takes some doing. And it takes some pacing. And even if it's not illness, maybe it's, you're dealing with caretaking for a family member or some unexpected things that are now your responsibilities. Maybe you're dealing with anxiety or depression or mental health issues that you need to make space for. These are all things that you can apply to that. You have to take care of yourself first. And that's what I would say. There were so many days that I just did not take care of myself first and put everybody else first because I felt bad, because I felt like I just had to deliver, because I had to be my word. In some moments, you cannot be your word. And so in those moments, how do you honor your word? How can you be in integrity and still, not feel flaky and not be that person that's just really flighty? How do you get that across? So that took some doing and figuring out and communicating that with people. But what I found was that humanity is awesome. That my clients understood, especially when I was honest with them. When I tried to hide it and not be explicit, like, okay, I have long COVID and I'm doing my very best and I will get this done. I'm sorry if I cannot meet today, but I will have this to you in the next 2 days. And if I need to change the timeline for any reason, I will reach out. When I took that approach, I had a much better outcome than when I tried to make up excuses. And I found myself trying to make up excuses because I was embarrassed. To be honest, I was really embarrassed. And why am I embarrassed? Things happen. People get sick. We all have things pop up. Family issues pop up that we need to take care of. So why am I embarrassed of long COVID? And I had to work through that psychologically. But communication, that is really, really, really key to working with clients in ways when you are feeling like your body is unpredictable or circumstances are unpredictable. You can work through it and still be in integrity. Then one other thing that really popped up for me, which I thought was really interesting from long COVID, was really figuring out my relationship with my partner, Jason. A lot of stuff came to light for me during the time when I was ill. And I had these moments where I had to just be with my own thoughts, and I couldn't be just busy doing and pushing all of my emotions away. And long COVID actually just was such a gift. It did something wonderful for me in that it brought my emotions to the surface. And I had to feel the feels because there was nothing else I could do in the moment. I had to go through all of the raw emotions. I had to deal with a lot of stuff from my past that came up during this long COVID period, especially when my energy was down. My brain was really foggy. It was like I felt like my brain was like this jumbled mess. So it surfaced a lot of things that I needed to work through. And it was very hard, I will say. I had a lot of tough conversations. But if you listen to one of my podcasts, the podcast where I talk about your relationship does not need a label, it's one of the earlier ones, you can actually hear my story about my relationship and with Jason and just how it has changed and evolved over time. And long COVID, I would say, definitely pushed that in the right direction and helped me to bring a lot of things to surface for myself, really understand who I am, how I identify, why I identify this way, and how I can make my relationship with my family better. And so that was a side effect that was really hard at the time because I had to have all those tough emotional conversations. But now on the other side of it, it is one of the most beautiful gifts I could have had. And I feel like if I had not gone through long COVID, I would not have had that opportunity to actually understand myself in that way and to be more honest with my partner and to create a relationship that both of us feel loved, we feel comfortable, we feel happy, and we feel like we have a wonderful life together and that we're on the same path. And so if you are going through illness and you are having relationship issues at the same time, that don't feel like you're the only one that happens to. It happens to a lot of us, and it's just not talked about. Most of us focus so much on the physical symptoms that we don't realize like all of the emotional stuff that comes up during that period, especially for those of us who tend to suppress emotions by nature. That's just, I've always suppressed. I've always pushed them down. And so when they bubbled up, I didn't know what to do with them. So getting some help during that time, I had a therapist who worked with me through it. And that support, combined with the long COVID support, I was receiving some support also from my health practitioner about midway through the illness. And that made a huge, huge difference, just feeling supported by people and having a team around me. And then a partner that was also willing to let me work through the stuff and give me that space that I needed. It was a really beautiful growth opportunity. And that part, I wouldn't really trade it. To be honest, I feel like it was a really big gift and I am happier because of it. Would I really want to go through long COVID again? No, I wouldn't, but I've learned a lot. And so I think to this day, do I still have, so people are probably asking and wondering, do you still have long COVID? Yes, I do. So basically I would say that I have it, but I don't have very many wellness days at this point. I am, August 2020. So by the time I'm recording this, I'm about a year and a half in, maybe a little more than that, with the illness. And I felt like the first 16 months were the most challenging. And once 2022 started rolling around, I felt like I was turning the corner. But what I have taken from that experience is really being in more alignment with my body, what my body needs, and learning how to be, not just do. Like my identity is not from how fit I am, how healthy I am, what my blood work says. I know that sounds odd to many of you, but yes, I took a lot of pride in that. How much I could exercise in a day. I still struggle with that because I love exercise and I want to do it all day long. But really starting to put more value in who I am and not just what I can do. And then I alter my goals. So I have learned over time that there are certain goals that I start pursuing that are actually counterproductive to my health. And sometimes I get myself into a pickle. I will be honest, over the last couple of weeks, I got myself into a pickle and I overcommitted and was giving too much to a program that just wasn't giving me the return on investment and just cost too much time. And I had to bow out. And that was really, really difficult because I felt like I was not being my word. But in that moment, I said, I am honoring my word. And I explained, and I was very honest. Long COVID happened. This is pushing me beyond my limits and my body is collapsing right now. And so learning to just recognize those moments for what they are and what I can do in that moment to remedy them. And so what I have done that I really, really like, and I'm not sure if other people are doing something like this, but I call them setting up wellness days. So especially when I was in the midst of long COVID and trying to kind of figure this all out, I would set a goal for the month because at one point in time, it was literally 1 out of every 3 days one month it was 1 out of almost every 2 days, I would have what I would call a wellness day, which means I needed to rejuvenate. I couldn't do that much. I had to lie in bed a lot. I had to take naps. I had to not do as much computer work. I'd have to do 2 coffee enemas a day. You've probably heard me talk about coffee enemas. I will probably do a whole episode on that because it's so fun. But those actually are very rejuvenating for me and help me to decompress and help me to relax. And then I had to just kind of pace myself in my schedule and take on less work. So I would set a goal for each month to have like one fewer, long COVID wellness day each month. So for example, for 1 month, I was like, okay, I had 13 days that I would consider wellness days. And this next month, I'm going to shoot for 12. And so each month, I would just try to get one more good day. And if I could just get one more good day, I knew that at some point, most of my days would be good. And a high percentage of my days would be not long COVID days. And these days, I usually have 1 or 2, sometimes 3, long COVID days per month. And as long as I'm taking care of myself, this is pretty normal. And I know that, okay, this is all right. My body needs a break and I'm going to be instead of do today. And so I feel like that's such a good approach. So thinking in terms of spoons, like how many spoons and how much energy do you have that day? And where are those spoons going? Are you happy with where those spoons are being spent? If not, you should change it. Like don't have stupid calls that you don't need to have. And don't feel like you have to go socialize with people if you are exhausted and you just need to stay home that night. For me, these were things I had to work out and figure out. And then also the wellness days. So how many wellness days per month or per week are you shooting for? And if you are trying to, get that number down so you can have more good days, fantastic. And then figuring out diet and exercise and movement and how all of these things come together to make you a healthier you. And that's really what it's all about. It's about taking care of ourselves. It's about being a good example to our kids, to our family, to our coworkers, to our colleagues, to those around us, to our friends who are watching us go through this. And when we try to hide it and pretend that we are feeling fine and we're not being authentic. We are not being in alignment with who we are. We are not showing people the best versions of ourselves. It's okay for it to be ugly. We don't have to be this perfect Instagram fitness health epitome of lifestyle design. I don't know. It's like you see like influencers, you're like, oh, they just have like perfect days all the time taking photo shots and talking about how wonderful their life is. We don't have to do that. We can show up as the most present, real, authentic version of ourselves. And that's what lifestyle design is all about. It's really about creating as many wonderful days as we can have in a week, in a month, in a year, so that we can self-actualize, so that we can give back to the world, so that we are present and able to give back to our communities and to be there for the people who matter to us. That's really what this is all about. So I hope that was helpful today, and I feel really like I shared a lot. So I hope that it was inspiring in some way, that if you are going through this, I don't want you to feel alone. I felt so alone and that nobody really understood me, and that I just was misunderstood and people kind of played down what I was going through because I looked so healthy on the outside that people just could not imagine that I was collapsing on the floor, for hours at a time because I was just so exhausted, in tears and crying. So if this is you, just know that you're not alone. If you want to talk about it, if you want to share your experience, I'm here. I'm here. So you can Instagram me at Mango Effect Podcast if you want to talk about your story. Maybe you also have somebody in your life that you're supporting through some type of illness like this. And I want to say, I am giving you lots of kudos and lots of credit because my partner Jason went through all of this with me. He was literally going to the store getting me chicken soup when days I couldn't stomach food. He was there literally propping me up like, Mindy, I'll set up your lights. He's like, okay, the lights are on. Go. Okay, the lights are off. Here's the bed. Like literally helping me through the day on some moments like that. So if you are supporting somebody through an illness, through an injury, through anything like this, my hat goes off to you. Thank you so much for doing what you do. Your person really appreciates it, even if they can't express it in the moment, even if they seem angry, even if they seem depressed or anxious. Thank you for what you're doing. It is such a wonderful gift that you are giving to them. So thank you for that. And then what's one big experience or takeaway that you have had either in supporting somebody through something like long COVID or through an illness or through an injury or something that you've experienced yourself? Is there a silver lining? Because that's what we're always looking for. I'm always looking for that silver lining. Like, what is the good that I can see here? How is this helping me to become a better human? What am I learning? I have learned so much. I have learned not to be so proud about my health and fitness and put myself on a pedestal on like, wow, I'm so healthy and fit. Nothing can touch me. I have so much more empathy and sympathy for people that have gone through health challenges. It is not always in our control, contrary to what I used to think as a younger person. Like, sometimes things just happen. Sometimes genetically we are more prone to feel the after effects of something like COVID or some type of other illness. So I think having empathy for others and really understanding that this is a journey that we're all on, I think there's something really beautiful in that. So let's encourage and inspire each other this week. All right. So if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Mango Effect podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. I'd be absolutely thrilled if you like the show and want to write a 5-star review. That will definitely help us as we're growing. We're a new show, and I am excited about next week's topic as well. So have a beautiful rest of your week, and I will talk with you soon.